We're going to begin mapping our shadows for our master bedroom by defining them on the floor plan first. Locate the center of your light source and bring that through all corners of every object on the page. And that'll give us the shape of the cast shadows, the shadows that all our objects are casting onto the floor. So as you can imagine, the light's from above, so all of our top surfaces are going to be in the light. The things on the floor itself are blocking the light, so that will create some shadows. And let's start with the bed. That's our focus in the drawing, so might as well start there. And I go through every corner. If I were to draw all the lines, you'll see that I'm hitting every corner, and I'm hitting both sides of the footboard and both sides of the footboard on the other side. And this will give me just the beginning of the shape of the shadow on the floor. So both sides of the bed are casting shadows onto the floor. The light is right in the center, and you can see evidence of this if you look around you and see something with a light above, right down the center of it, or almost the center of it, the way that we have it here. You'll see this phenomena, that there'll be shadows on either side. And I'm going to go through my bedside tables. The wardrobe is directly across from the light source, so we don't have a shadow on this side. We don't have a shadow on the front because it's facing the light. That light ray is facing. So, like the light is facing the front of both of the side tables as well. But we do have a shadow over here because this is definitely interrupting the light. Now, in terms of the length of the shadow, the larger they are, the darker your whole space will look. So we don't want anything too large. So we don't have the advantage of the perspective. We don't have both the top point and the bottom point. We just have the bottom point. So we'll just make a guess. We'll say 1/2 foot here for this shadow, and 1/2 foot on the other side. Now, what's important to notice is that I know this is a straight line because this is actually the shadow for the top of the bed. And when I bring it down here, it's interrupted by the footboard, and I can take a little estimate as to how much higher the footboard is going to look than the mattress, the top of the mattress. And once I decide that, where that crosses this projection line from the light, I just go across. And the reason I know to go straight across again is because this is a shadow for the top of the footboard. So that's the shape of my shadow so far. So, and these will come across and meet. And if you didn't have a footboard to project, what you could do is just ignore that and make it straight. You don't have to worry about that. So our shadow, let's do our side tables as well. So we're going to put, they're the same height as the bed, so 1/2 foot will do that for them as well. And the light is just hitting these a little bit differently because the bed is not in the middle. So now this whole thing will be thrown into shadow, so I might just extend the shadow right to the wall and not worry too much about it. So now I'll just begin to fill in a little bit of the shadow shape here. I can't get too close or my head will be in the way, but so forgive me if the lines are a little bit, my coloring is a little bit off. But this makes sense now, and we've got that feeling of the light being in the center of the bed, and oops, that's the headboard, the base footboard. So you've got that feeling of the light being overhead. Okay, So this one has a... Now, on the seating at the end of the bed, we can go ahead with our 1/2 foot. It'd probably be slightly less since this is only 1.5 feet tall, whereas our bed, our mattress, was 2 feet tall. So now what I should have done there was taken one side, bring it over, and then found the second side by where this crosses over. So I've made that a little bit too wide. And this is what the shape would look like on the floor in your perspective drawing. So it's probably a good idea then to go directly now to our perspective and do the same thing. So to find the light source in the room where it's going to hit the floor, that's our first job, we have to take it from the center where it's placed on the ceiling, use our left vanishing point to bring it across to the wall, and I'm using my left vanishing point, bring it over. Then where it hits the ceiling, bring it down onto the floor. And then where it hits the floor here, right at the line where the wardrobe is, you use your left vanishing point again to bring it across. And if you drop this down straight from the center of the light above, you'll get a point on the floor where the rays of the light are going to be, where it's going to hit the floor. And then you do the exact same thing we did on the floor plan. We've got something we can use now. We've also got a measure. We chose that the shadow for our bed is going to be about 1/2 foot. And over here, we can do the same. We still got our boxes, so we can still do the same. So I'm going through all of my corners using this dot. I'll go through my corners. I won't draw the lines in between. That can be a little confusing. Now, you have your title block down here, so you may want to just either draw right over the title block, because not on your finished drawing, but just for the time being, you may want to do that. And so I'm going to go through here. This, I think, is going to be reaching too far out for your drawing, but we can have it on the box drawing. It won't be a problem. And over here. So just doing the exact same thing we did on the floor plan. Now, the other side of the bed, it's going to be 1/2 foot. We already decided that, so we can put that in by looking at that. So here's where our light hits the floor. We can put our shadow on the bedside table. Now, something is going to occur though. There's going to be shadow all along here. Let's put that in. 1/2 foot we decided. So anywhere on here I can just take 1/2 box. And what's going to happen is that it's going to be stopped. The shadow is going to be interrupted by the bedside table. So when that happens, it has to take on the form of the thing that the shadow is on. So it's got to take the form of the table. Now, will it go on the top? For that answer, you have to make an X and find the middle. There's my middle of my light source on the ceiling now. And from this corner of the bedside table, I'm going to make an angle. And you'll see that everywhere around you in your room. You can see that angle. Now I have a shape for what the shadow would look like as it's cast from the bed onto the bedside table. The other table, we don't really see it, so that's not going to be a problem. Now this point I got easily enough because I know that I only chose to have 1/2 foot of shadow, 1/2 foot worth of shadow on the other side. So there's a foot, we took half Here we took a half. So this one I figured it out, but this one I don't need to figure it out. I can just go ahead and put that in. Footboard is a little bit taller, so I'm going to put that in using my right vanishing point. I'm going to, whoops, cut off the height of that with my right vanishing point, and then to finish it I have to use my left vanishing point. And for convenience sake, I think I'm just going to continue this shadow. So I'm using my right vanishing point again. I could make it a little lower. It is lower, so maybe make it a little lower. And it'll fit on my page better as well. Sometimes the decisions come from that method of thinking as well. What's going to look good. Okay, so now we have a shadow for this box, a shadow for the headboard, the footboard, pardon, and shadow for the bed itself, and the shadow that's cast onto the bedside table. We're not going to see it, what's happening on the other side, so this should suffice for us. Now, on the bed itself, it looks as though we have two sides that are in shadow, because I'm having a shadow from this footboard onto this. I know I have that. What we'll do is just decide we want a little bit of shadow on there here. We want shadow from our footboard onto the seating. Okay. We're not going to be able to see this shadow, but it's good practice, and you'll need to put this on your floor plan. And this, of course, is built in, so there is no shadow there. Now, the shelves, though, they are going to have shadow. So the best way to work with these, to get the angles exactly right, is to use the actual light source. But since it's not giving us anything here, it's almost straight across from the light source, we can either use the top and get a little bit that way, or we could just estimate something, since this is such a small space anyway. Now remember that the bottom of this shadow has to go to your right vanishing point, because it's a shadow for this front edge of the shelf. So now if I do this up here, I'm going to get almost nothing, so pretty much nothing at all. But I think that we should put it in anyway, because we know there's going to be shadow cast here. So the underside and this is going to be in shadow. Now, this is a different story altogether, but I think we should use the lower one to do this shadow. Otherwise, it's going to be too large. And we use our right vanishing point to fill that in. Depending on the shape of our light source, our pendant light, the shadow for that would be, if it's round, of course it's on the perimeter. You could choose up one side to be darker than the other. So we could ideally just put this in. It's probably not going to be a shadow value, but a middle value. But just to explain to yourself that since we've chosen this side for shadow, we might think of this as the shadow side for this, but we'll look at each person's light fixture individually. On the walls themselves, we're going to have a penumbra, so we're going to have a little bit of shadow. This is what we're doing now, of course, is preparing for hatching. So all of these areas on this drawing where we're putting the shadows is exactly what you're going to use to put your hatching in with your very, very thin pen. And over on this wall we have the same thing. We have shadow. So this is going to be in shadow even though we were unable to see it made from the light source itself. So don't lose sight of the corner of your room. It's right there, so when you're doing your penumbra, you'll be a little more careful where you put it. This shadow, it's the same height as the bed, so we can use 1/2 foot for that as well. It seems rather large out here, so maybe we'll trim it a little bit. So there's some flexibility in your shadows. The direction they go in is a little bit more important than the size of them, but our concept is to have a brighter space. We don't want to have it so heavy with shadow that it looks gloomy. So where this hits the wall, you go straight up and find this that we obtained through using the very center of the lowest part of the light. We were able to put that in. I would be inclined to fill the whole back of that in. It's not anywhere near the light. There's this little part here, and then with the underside, and then there's the underside. The front of the shelf would be getting light. Now I can't really show that. It's a little too small here, but this would be shadow, and I think the whole back would be shadow. But it's good to go through the practice of discovering the exact shape according to the given light source. Now this item, it's the front of it. Our wardrobe is getting light all across the front of it. But this side isn't getting light, but it doesn't cast a shadow. If we go back to our floor plan, we'll see that it's not going to cast a shadow here. It's directly across from the light. And the headboard, since this part of our diagram is in shadow, this would be in shadow as well. So let's start now to put the actual shadows on the objects themselves. Once you get this all mapped out, all your cast shadows. So your hatching goes in all the places where you have these cast shadows, shadows cast by the object that's interrupting the light. Once you have those all mapped out, then it's easy to go around and figure out where the form shadows. And for those, we can easily see that they're attached to the cast shadows. So the side that's casting a shadow is the side that is the form shadow, the shadow on the form. So we can easily do this now. What's great about this is that this dark is right in the foreground. These shadows are great. So the contrast between the side and the top is really going to be effective, depending on how much you want to play this up. So again, here, this is adjacent to the shadow that's casting it. So that's our form shadow. And look to see if we have any more form shadows. And this shadow will move from dark to light this way. This will move from dark to light this way. So that by the time this shadow hits the floor, there's some reflected light that will light this part up a bit, so that our darkest part is going to be at the top and gets a little bit lighter as it goes down, and then the cast shadow is going to get darker, go from dark underneath and get lighter as it goes this way. And that'll be the way to get this to really pop out. And it goes along very well with our shadow mapping and our geometric shapes that have served us so well so far. So we're looking at the box when we're looking at the bed, and this is our C side. So we can put this in as C, and this is C, and the top is A. The whole top of the bed is A. This is a B side because it's a facing plane. It's in the light, but it's oblique to the light. And I'd like you to go through your drawing as well and put these notations in as also. And some of the shelves are going to have a little bit of light on them. The front plane, this you would think is a light plane, but it's not. It's a B plane. So, because it's in the light, but it's oblique to the light because the light is on top. This part is an A, and this is a B. And this is an A, this is a B. And this is a B. That was better with the red. Mixed up my colors. And this is a B. That's A. That's C. And this is C. C is all around here. So, but we don't want to make them too heavy and too dark. This is a B value too. This whole window wall. This now, I think we should make this a C. Even though it's not shadow, it's not facing the light, and it's not oblique to the light. It isn't in the light at all. So it's somewhat of a decision you make, just the way we decided to go in, leave the shelves themselves an A, but go back and make this a C back in here, because it makes it, it's a form shadow. It will provide a little bit of contrast. Now, you would think that this too should be a C, because it's not getting light at all. It's blocking the light and casting a little shadow. But I think it would make it too dark. So I would opt for a B here. And because we would go B, C, A, so that would make it a little more interesting. And this is a B, so the two would go together. The reason I would do that is because this is actually very close to the light. So it's not a bad choice to make this a B. This, I think, would be a B. And that's a B. And remember what B looks like. B is your 3 and your 5, so it's a middle value. Not our darkest values, but a middle value. So B is like this around here, and here, going from dark to light. And our carpet and our floor is going to be an A. So that's all light values. And this is an A. And the wall is going to be a B, because it's in the light, but it's a little bit oblique to the light. That whole facing plane is B. The figure will have form shadow as well. So from here, this whole side of her is lit up, but the underside of her isn't. So you could go in and try to mimic her shape. I think I would dress her up in something a little more tasteful, and this side of her arm would have shadow, and the underside of her arm would have shadow. This is in shadow. It's not, her body is probably casting a little shadow, so that you could bring in your grays onto the figure as well. Otherwise she'll look cut out and stuck down. So, and remember your graphic ideals, that you want to think shape, not get too fussy with it.